Welcome to the Slow Wine Guide 2021. I'm here with Pax Mahle from Pax Mahle Wines. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma.
Great. We're going to talk about the 3 wines that will be featured in the 2021 guide. And we're starting with one of my faves.
Yeah, let's start with the Chenin Blanc, the 2018 Buddha's Dharma Chenin Blanc. This is a wine that we've been making for, let's see, I suppose the 15 was our first commercial release of this wine. There was some experimentation with these grapes initially from the vineyard, but 15 was the first we released. This is the 18. An old vineyard, you know, the vineyard was originally planted in the 40s. There was some replanting that took place in the late 70s because the vines were, you know, there was a lot of dead vines in the vineyard apparently. And so you have these old vines that are planted at the base of Enlightenment Mountain in just east of Ukiah. So it's a very volcanic kind of old school site. It's always been farmed organically. It's called the Buddha's Dharma Vineyard because it is it's owned by the city of 10,000 Buddhas, which is actually the name of the city in California that's just east of Ukiah. It's a outcropping of Buddhists that teach there. People live there and learn. And so this vineyard sort of fortifies their city and has all sorts of old, interesting grapevines planted in it, such as Carignan, and there's some old vine Zin, and there's some very old Chardonnay, interestingly enough, and some Petit Syrah and some Mourvedre. So really neat stuff. But we focus from the Chenin Blanc from this vineyard, and this 18 is really quite special. It is 18 was a really cool vintage compared to 17. I mean, it was generally overall warmer, but the vintage itself was more even, and so that the grapes were able to hang on the vine a little longer than they did in 17. 17 was marked by some very serious heat at the end of the season, whereas 18 we were able to kind of hang the grapes out in a little bit longer, giving us a little bit more kind of wild, more aromatic kind of quality to the wine. But this is all hand harvested, brought into the winery. We crush it by foot in order to kind of release some of those aromas and phenolics into the juice, and then the grapes are put into the press. It's pressed immediately, and then the press is loaded again, and then those grapes sit in the press overnight, and then that's pressed, and those are joined together in the same tank. So we have one part of the grapes are pressed immediately, the other parts sit on the skins overnight. This gives us some micronutrients, and it gives us a lot of kind of nutrients and kind of fortification for the juice so that it ferments naturally. We don't add any yeast or any sulfur or any enzymes. And by soaking the skins in the juice, we find that we have cleaner fermentations that finish faster and more cleanly and better. And so therefore that makes the wine better in the end.
There's some magic in those skins, huh?
Yeah. It's like a natural sort of it's like a natural supplement sort of for the juice. But then the wine is after fermentation is complete, the juice is separated into a selection of some very old multi-use French oak puncheons, 500-liter puncheons, as well as some Stockinger 500-liter puncheons. Stockinger is a very old Austrian cooperage that makes a very subtle barrel to age wine in. It doesn't have the impact of French oak or American oak. It's a combination of Austrian oaks. And so the wine is even though it has new oak on it, it doesn't have that classic kind of new oak quality that you would anticipate a wine that has new oak on it.
Yeah, there's an elusive spice there that I can attribute to the oak. It's a secondary spice that I can attribute, but boy, is it elusive. It's so integrated.
Yeah. And so, and then the wines, we sort of Once the fermentations are complete, we'll kind of create the little lots and we'll have them together. And then the final selection is chosen just before bottling to choose our favorite pieces, our favorite barrels to blend together to make the final wine. And 2018 has a real sweetness to it from the vintage, as well as a lot of really saline kind of, salty kind of mineral quality to it.
Absolutely, saline mineral expression.
Yeah, we really like, we're really happy with the 18. And I think the longer hang time on the wine really gives the wine a lot more aromatic intensity as well.
Yeah, it's very different, and there's no question that the wine is showing the vintage,
Yep.
and because it's very different from the last couple of vintages that I've tasted, and just equally more fascinating to me that this new oak regime seems to just be a wonderful addition. Maybe it's just so beautifully knit with this vintage. Well, I'm going to revisit it again tonight at table, and again
Awesome.
tomorrow.
That's great.
Again
Yeah,
tomorrow as well too, because the 3-taste rule around here. Okay, so next up, the Gamay Noir. Love to get the details on this wine from you.
So yeah, Gamay Noir is something we're super proud of. There hasn't been a lot of true Gamay Noir in California.
Very little.
And it has a lot to do with the fact that Valdegui was misidentified as Gamay Noir, and so it didn't, because there was so much Valdegui planted, a lot of unlike Pinot Noir or even Syrah for that matter, it was pretty clear that those grapes didn't exist. And so there was a big push to bring those grape varieties into California. Whereas the assumption was that we already had Gamay Noir because of all the Valdegui that was misidentified. So to actually have actual Gamay Noir in California has been a really exciting thing for a lot of us winemakers. It's a grape, the Northern Rhone Valley, you see it's pretty common for people who work with Syrah to also work with Gamay, because Beaujolais is obviously just north of the Northern Rhone Valley and just
or just south of Burgundy.
And
technically part of Burgundy now, right?
Yes, exactly. So in looking at our sites, it's pretty common. We work with cold coastal vineyards for our Syrah. And so a lot of times the other grape varieties that are in those vineyards are Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So it's made sense for us to expand out into Gamay as well, because they grow well together on depending on the slope and the exposition that Syrah would. So we've actually budded over some Chardonnay to Gamay Noir. The vineyard is always made really delicious Chardonnay and really delicious Pinot Noir. And so when we were looking for some Gamay Noir cuttings to put in this vineyard, because it's planted in this gorgeous, very bright white volcanic soil, the volcanic soils are very acidic. And so what we did is we went to Beaujolais to find soils that had a lot of acid in them, and granite. The granitic hills of Fleury really matched the kind of chemical composition of what we were looking for. So what we were looking for is something that would do well in a site that was cool, that would do well in a site that had these granitic soils. And so we visited Jean-Louis Dutrève and got cuttings from his site, and then budded over the Chardonnay at this vineyard on the Sonoma coast to the Gamay Noir cuttings. And we get this really bright, fresh, really expressive, really fruit-driven, well, it's kind of a balance between savory and fruit. It's really a really delicious little wine. We don't destem at all. We leave it all whole cluster. We crush part of it by foot. The other part we leave whole so that it undergoes carbonic maceration. We then press them and age them separately, and then create the final wine from those two components. The carbonic part really adding a lot of freshness and aroma and lift and vibrancy, and then the whole cluster fermented adding that real savory, real meaty, you know, tannin and weight and texture. And the combination of those together really makes for just like a really supple, really delicious, in my opinion, really classic Gamay Noir.
When you said flurry, my eyes just flew open because I was writing very floral, violets, lavender, roses. Like, I think I got it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that backstory with us about where the cuttings came from.
Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
my God, that's extraordinary. Now,
Yeah, very neat.
this was had to be a couple of years ago because you know, it takes 3 or 4 years. So
Yep. Yeah, our first fruit off of that, the cuttings was 2015,
okay.
and we just made a little bit of wine because we didn't get very much fruit. And
Of
then
course, yeah.
In 2016, we bottled our first wine off of that vineyard. And I believe you have the 19 in front of you.
This is the 19.
Yeah. Yeah, which was just bottled and just being released this fall. So yeah. And the 19 is really, you know, it's interesting, talking about vintages, the 17 vintage was a wine that we didn't end up bottling because the grapes were so close to being perfect that when the heat wave hit, it kind of destroyed the delicacy of the wine, and the wine just unfortunately just did not, it was not very successful. The 18 was very exotic, and the 19 is our favorite so far, for sure.
Oh, it's a stunner. It's a stunner. Thank you so much for this sample. What a treat it is to discover it with your backstory. Thank you so much. So, and last but not least, the Syrah, the Griffiths Lair Syrah. This wine was given a Slow Wine Award this year for its extraordinary site expression and its great beauty. So tell us about this. Is the 2016 vintage of Griffiths Lair.
Yep, 2016, spectacular vintage for Syrah in Sonoma County, in our opinion. Wines that really, calling a wine balanced is kind of a funny thing, I think, because a lot of people are you know, have a real, you know, it's a very subjective kind of quality that it's hard to say, but there are certain vintages, I think, over the years that kind of, as time goes on, people can kind of come into kind of agreement on certain factors. And the 2016 vintage just really had a real balance of all of the things. I mean, it's not overtly like fruity. It's not too tannic. It's not too acidic. Everything, it just kind of falls into place with the 2016 vintage. And I think it's very well represented with this 26 Griffin's Lair, which is very coastal and very cold and windy spot. You can literally see the San Pablo Bay, and the Pacific Ocean isn't far. And so it's really influenced by these very serious winds that come blowing through the Petaluma wind gap. And these serious winds really just like blow right into the Griffin's Lair vineyard every day. 3:30, 4 o'clock, you can set your watch to it. Just the winds just start howling up the slope of Griffin's Lair and just come whipping over the top. And this intense, steady wind, it has an effect on the grapes. The grapes have a tendency to grow very thick skins, and they have a tendency to not grow very large. And so these very small, very thick-skinned berries make for a very naturally concentrated wine. And then the fact that this wine is so close to the bay and so close to the ocean, it retains all this freshness, this real saline kind of salt air, nori, zippy freshness from the bay. And you know, all this natural acidity because it's so close to the Pacific Ocean, with this density from the small berries, really gives this wine this really harmonious kind of quality. We of course don't destem the grapes. We leave them whole cluster. We crush it by foot, and then we do very little, you know, pump over or punch down with this wine because we have so much intensity and concentration already. What we're trying to do is just trying to get, you know, not extract too much from these skins. Some of our early vintages of this wine were quite tannic in their youth. They've really shed the tannins, and they're really quite lovely now. But now our approach is really just to kind of make the wine a little bit harmonious right off the bat. So very few punch downs, mostly all done by foot. And then pumping over solely to extract very little tannin, and still the wine is still very, very rich and very concentrated, but very Syrah and very California. And it's a wine that we've been making Our first Griffin's Lair was bottled in 2002, so this is a vineyard we've been working with for quite a few years now.
Yeah, you know this one inside out. Well, I can tell you the wine in my glass is deep. It's opaque. So color could kind of point you in one direction, but on the palate, it's definitely not over extracted. And for that, we thank you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely sublime. And also very savory. When you mentioned nori, but I definitely get that smoky, meaty quality from this Syrah. This is definitely on the bacony spectrum for me, which is delicious.
For sure. Yeah, and it has that every year. That's definitely a
marker.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Marker for the wine. Great. Well, it's been really lovely to visit these three sites through the glass and with you, Pax. Thank you very much. And we're so thrilled that this is your third year in the Slow Wine Guide.
Thank you so much, Deborah. It's my pleasure entirely. Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
Bye. Thank you.